Welcome to the Global Forum Networking Breakfast. My name is Amy Terrell. I'm from Music Canada, and we're proud sponsors of this event. It's early, and it's Friday of a long, what is always a busy few days of Canadian Music Week, so I appreciate everyone being here this morning. I'd like to thank Neil Dixon and his team from Canadian Music Week, and especially Evelyn Cream, who always does the lion's share of organizing for this event. So thank you very much to all of them. We've been holding this forum for about 10 years. It hasn't always been called the Global Forum, but what we have consistently done is brought speakers, international speakers, to address issues that are facing the global music community, to challenge assumptions, and to stimulate really interesting discussions at the tables in the last half of the event. And one of the nuts that's been really difficult to crack has been how to get artists engaged in campaigns, in advocacy. This morning's speaker has done that better than anyone else I know, and I think we're all going to be really excited to hear Blake Morgan when he comes up to the stage. But first, to get things started, I'd like to introduce our moderator and host, Chris Castle. Chris is an old friend of Music Canada. He's a lawyer from Austin. He is a champion for artists' rights, for music generally, and an expert called on many issues to speak internationally, and we're happy to have Chris as our moderator this morning.
Well, thank you, Amy. I think it's appropriate to take a minute, as this is the 10-year mark for this event, take a moment to recognize Music Canada's efforts to bring important topics to the Global Forum, and in particular, artists who speak about artists' rights. This platform has brought many interesting and meaningful insights by artists who have gone on to make an abiding place for themselves in the policy debate, which once again shows Graham Henderson's great knack for spotting talent early. Jaron Lanier, Ellen Seidler, Robert Levine, and David Lowery are each past speakers and have gone on to advance the cause of artists' rights, and these voices are being heard by governments around the world. One of these arcs culminated this year with David Lowery being invited to testify on the copyright matters before the Intellectual Property Subcommittee at the U.S. House of Representatives. And if you were here last year, you remember David Lowery made a presentation about how the new boss is worse than the old boss. One of these arcs, or rather, in the process of that subcommittee hearing, a leading academic, who I think it's fair to say is really on the other side, was asked by that same committee how she could say that a working group she organized represented consensus on copyright when no artists were involved in the working group. That had not really ever happened before that I remember. So I think overall these speakers that Graham has had here have really gone on to make a big impact in terms of our business and how artists are perceived by lawmakers. This year we have we're extending that great tradition with Blake Morgan, who's an artist and entrepreneur who's the force behind the I Respect Music campaign. If you've been following that, the campaign focuses specifically on what we would probably think of as an American issue, getting artists paid for terrestrial airplay. And since many of you come from civilized countries, where that's not an issue, we're going to focus today not so much on the substance of the law around that issue, but the topic of grassroots organizing, which Blake has done, I think, an outstanding job at, and the remarkable success that he's had in the first 100 days of the I Respect Music campaign. So the campaign has inspired music makers and music lovers in the thousands, and has also inspired artists from other disciplines to come forward and help. And so if we're ready, we'll start today with a music video that was spontaneously created by New York photographer and videographer Taylor Valentine that has become something of an anthem for the campaign. So go ahead, you can hit that now. So let's welcome Blake Morgan. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Graham, for having me. I know it's early. So I feel like we're here to talk about what works for grassroots organizing. And maybe to try to share some tools that you'd be able to use for your own campaigns. And I've been thinking about what the best way to do that would be, and I think really the best way I can try to help is to tell you what I did and what we've been doing and what we're doing now, in the hopes that the tools we used would then be helpful to you, that you could take them and use them and make them your own for your own campaign. The reality is, I think that in order for it to be authentic and intimate and real, your campaign is going to be different than your campaign, which is going to be different than your campaign, because it's going to come from you. So hopefully in showing you what I did and what we put together, then you can take away what you need that would work for you. So I became something of a blip on the artist advocacy radar last year when an email exchange between myself and the founder of Pandora, Tim Westerman, was published in the Huffington Post. And in the email exchange, I, in a measured and high road and respectful fashion, I called out Mr. Westerman and Pandora on what I felt was inconsistent and unethical behavior of the company in not paying artists. And when the email exchange was published, it went viral almost immediately. And thousands of people shared it and liked it on Facebook and were tweeting about it. And it became quite a big story. In fact, the next day, Pandora lost $130 million of value in the stock market. And that kind of woke everybody up, like, whoa. So there was a lot of press surrounding this. Time and Forbes and Reuters picked up the story. And a few months later, after all the outcry from music makers and music lovers, also for the first time, who didn't realize how some of this stuff worked when it came to royalties. A few months later, Pandora abandoned, because of all the bad press, they abandoned their own signature legislation and announced that they were abandoning it. And to me, and I think to people in music in general, that was a real moment where we sort of felt like, wow, I didn't know we could do that. I wonder what else we could do. And that moment, felt different than what we've been feeling for the last few years, and certainly what I have been feeling in music. And that victory, however qualified and however ephemeral or fleeting, or whether it's even a lasting victory, one thing was sure, which is that we knew how that felt, and it sure didn't feel like losing. It felt like something else, and it had a feeling to it that we hadn't really experienced. And we're like, wow, they actually backed off of this thing because we raised our voices and made respectful arguments and used this amazing thing, which is fact. So at that moment, with that feeling, this really positive feeling running through just kind of the zeitgeist of music with music makers, I began to think like, well, this is a really different feeling. How do we run with this feeling? What do we do now? What else can we do? What is this really about? And the fundamental thing that it was about is a very simple thing, which is that artists should be paid for their work. And it's okay to say that. As an artist, it's okay to say, you know what? I should be paid for my work. It's all right. It's okay. Look what happens when we say that. So that positive message and how to distill that positive message into something, I wanted to find a way to make that into a rallying cry. Because the spontaneous thing with the Pandora thing was really, it was individuals and it was not fractured, but everyone was just kind of doing it in a spontaneous fashion. What if we had something to rally around? What is this about? Well, you don't get paid for something unless your work is respected. And what would be something that we could organize people around to further this great vibe, this positive thing that's happening? So I was brainstorming with a friend of mine on the phone, and Chris was talking about civilized countries. Well, I live in the United States, which is civilized in many ways, but in one way that it's not. And in music, this is an issue that really unites everyone in music, whether it's songwriters or trombone players or singers or anybody, which is the embarrassment that artists don't get paid for radio play in the United States. This is an issue that everyone agrees on that has got to be fixed. It's a heavy lift on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's the easy one. It's the one where we all say, yeah, I know, this is terrible. So the quintessential example of this is that Aretha Franklin doesn't get paid for her song Respect. She's never made a nickel from that song being on the radio. Otis Redding wrote the song, and he gets paid as he should. But she's never been paid. So we were brainstorming on the phone. Oh, I love Aretha. I respect Aretha. Somehow the idea of her song, which is about respect, she's never been respected enough to be paid for it. I respect Aretha. I respect, it's even bigger than that, I respect music. And when I realized, I just said this on the phone, it's not respect music, or we should respect music. It's I respect music. And the magic word is actually I. Because I'm not telling you how you should feel. I'm going to see if I have the courage to tell you how I feel. And you can do with that what you want. And that, when I realized I respect music, that's something that people would want to rally around. But the truth is, this is honest to how I feel. If they did or if they didn't, I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth as to how I feel about what's going on, how I feel about music. So it's going to be honest no matter what. It's going to be authentic, and there's an intimacy to it. We should respect music is a very different message. So I didn't feel that I could simply put this thing out. What is this going to be about? And I had this idea that maybe we could rally people around the simple idea that artists should be paid for their work. Specifically on the radio, because it's the easy one, right? So I wanted to see, maybe, I had this idea, maybe we could build a platform, maybe we could have a petition, where we petition Congress and urge them to support artists paid for radio play. But it didn't, I felt like I needed to build a bridge to that idea. So I wanted to also express, instead of simply leaping into an action, I wanted to express how I felt about this and what I respect music would mean to me. Why is that something that would be worthy of rallying around? So I wrote an op-ed in the Huffington Post called Art and Music Are Professions Worth Fighting For. And what the article was about was actually, it was about an experience that I had earlier in the year when I was invited back to my high school to talk at Career Day. And this is the thing where they have a doctor room and a lawyer room and a marketing room and an advertising room and an art room. So I was in the art room talking about the merits of my profession. Something happened at this Career Day, which is when it came time, I was on a panel with 2 or 3 other people, and when it came my turn, I was fairly blown away at these kids who were in the art room, who had felt compelled enough to sit in that room instead of the doctor room, because something inside of them had said, oh, I think I want to be a painter, I want to be a songwriter, I want to be a playwright. So when it came time for me to talk, I said, I have a feeling that something inside of you has wanted to be in this room because there's something in you that says, I think I want to be an artist. And I'll bet you that you're already hearing the voices out there that are telling you it's not practical. It's not practical to want to be a songwriter. It's not practical to want to be a violinist or a playwright or something. It doesn't make sense. And I think the world is probably already telling you this, and the world is going to continue to tell you that you shouldn't try to do that, because it doesn't make sense. So for my 3 minutes here today, I want to tell you that I think you should try, and I hope you do. I really do. And I hope you go for it with joyous abandon, and I hope you do it without a plan B. And as soon as I said that, the teacher at the back of the room stood up and said, no, that's wrong, you should always have a plan B. You should always have a plan B, that's not true. And I said, I gotta tell you, this is what I'm talking about. Because here we are in a room where these kids are saying, I think that this might be something I want to pursue. And right away, you're telling them that they shouldn't go for it fully. And she's like, no, but it makes sense to have a plan B. I said, well, then answer me this. Is that what they're telling them in the doctor room? Is that what they're telling them in the marketing room? When the kids say, I think I want to go into advertising, they go, oh, no, you really better have a plan B. This is demoralizing. This isn't right. And so this is what I'm talking about. The world is going to tell you shouldn't even try. But I hope you do, regardless. I really do. And so I wrote this article. There was a great story also. There was a girl who was in the class, and a few weeks later she came to a concert of mine in New York City. And she came up to me after the show, and she handed me her newly pressed 5-song CD. And she said, I just want you to know that I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. And her mother was with her. And her mother said, well, actually, we're going to go for it. We're going to do it together. And it was really moving and really powerful. So that's what I wrote this article about. And at the end of the article, I say, there are tremendous fights ahead against powerful forces on many fronts, but we have something those forces don't have. We have something worth fighting for. My New Year's resolution is to stand up more and speak more. I respect my profession. I respect artists. I respect music. And that's the first time that I used those 3 words in public. And the article really meant a lot to me, and I'd written other op-eds like this, and they certainly got some attention. And I expected this to get some, but I didn't expect what happened next, which is the article completely blew up, and it became the Huffington Post's #1 music article for the year. And it got over 40,000 likes and 8,000 shares on Facebook, and it just went nuts. And teachers were sharing it, saying yes. They weren't identifying with the teacher who had kind of demoralized the students. They were saying, my God, if only we had more funding for our arts program. I want to teach that too. So So those 3 words, I respect music, that's the first time I used them, and the spirit of the article really furthered that feeling that I had, which is, I don't know what this exactly feels like, but it sure doesn't feel like losing, right? And the next day, we were at 5,000 likes and 10,000 likes, and the next morning we were at 15 and 20, and it just started rolling and rolling and rolling. People clamoring and saying, this is how I've been feeling too. So there was a feeling that we connected with, and I think that's a really important part of the I Respect Music thing, which is that, at least for me, I haven't always known what the right thing to do is, but I've known how I've felt, and I've simply tried to communicate that, and it's kept it honest, and it's kept it real. So, 2 days after the article came out, I saw this on Twitter. And there had been a lot of tweets, thousands of them, but this tweet really is the tweet that started the whole I Respect Music thing. This is a young woman in the Philippines, and she put, I have something worth fighting for. And this defiant and beautiful pose that she's striking. It took my breath away. And in what she wrote, she writes, I have something worth fighting for, at the Blake Morgan, that's me. And then she puts hashtag, I respect music. And that really is the tweet that started it all, because even though I was going to be using this hashtag, I hadn't really yet. And she chose to do it utterly spontaneously. She got the message at the end of that piece. And she rolled with it. And it just rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled from there. People started quoting the last couple phrases of my article. I respect my profession. And that's another thing. I think music, at least in the United States, isn't necessarily thought of as a profession worth fighting for. It's like, oh, why should you be paid for the job you don't have, Blake? And it's like, well, actually I have 9 jobs. So that part of the message really did resonate, which is why the career day part of it. It's a career, this is a job. That's part of the dignity, I think, that got communicated. So people started rolling with this. And so then it was, I felt with that feeling out there, it was an appropriate time to put something together where people could come to, an action that we could take. Again, with the idea of Aretha and the performance royalty. So we built a very simple web page at irespectmusic.org. By the way, I woke up in the middle of the night, I was like, God, I wonder if these domain names are available. And I assumed that they wouldn't be, and I went, and to my horror, they were all available. irespectmusic.anything was available. Nobody in the history of the internet had ever thought to use those 3 words as a web address, including me. So what I did is we got the word out that this was coming, and the way that we got that out is we got the webpage up, and there was a countdown clock, 7 days ahead of when we were going to launch. I respect music is coming. That's the only thing it said. And I put this video up that I shot off my laptop, and don't blink because it's very short, if they can play it. Nope. Let's see.
It's not rolling.
Okay. So, well, here's what I do in the video. I'll live enact it. As you can see, why have film Blake when you have actual Blake? So as you can see, I'm holding a Sharpie. So what I do is I actually just show the Sharpie, and I look down, and I write on a card, and I hold up the card. It's very like the cards you guys have right here. I just wrote hashtag I respect music. I wrote I respect music on one side, and I flip it over, and it says hashtag I respect music on the other side. And that's it. It's 7 seconds long, and I posted it on Instagram. And that was on the I respect music page. I never told anybody to do it. I never told anybody to mimic it, or here's what would be a great idea. I just did that, and I posted it. And almost instantly, hello. And almost instantly, people started doing it, and they started posting their own photos, holding up the hashtag, and smiling. And this was even before we launched the page, which means, it could have been anything. irespectmusic.org could have been anything. It could have been dancing cats. It could have been a recipe for, a dessert topping or something. But there was a clear amount of trust that had already been built because of the article and because of the stuff that had come before. So, so people just started posting their own photos. I'm going to go to the next one, guys. Okay? Oh, I'm waiting for the next one. Okay. This is a function of grassroots organizing, by the way. Okay, so yes, so that's the next slide. So people started posting their own photos. And one of the first recognizable people to do it in this week before we launched was David Lowery. And aside from this being a courageous man who's been out talking about artist rights for a long time, this was a real powerful moment. Also, look at his face, and look how psyched he is. So this was a loving, powerful moment that immediately also extended that whole, how we were feeling. And what he did is he posted this photo and he tweeted. And the tweet was, "It's on. I respect music." And that's all you needed to say. So this was already several hundred photos in just those first few days. But when David did this, it was such a shot in the arm for me and for people, because it said, it spoke to the fact that we're all in this together, and we're not alone. We're doing this together. So that was a really, really, really big deal. So we had this week before we launched the page, and this idea of the Aretha royalty, the performance royalty. How am I going to talk about this? How am I going to, even though nobody even knows what we're going to go for, or that we're even going to have a petition, how do you talk about this idea simply and clearly in a way that people can understand? What would possibly compel people to sign a congressional petition? 40,000 likes for an article is amazing, but it is a button that just says, "I like this." It's not a button. What if that button actually did something? That's a different thing. So the first thing is, did you know that the United States is the only democratic country in the world where artists don't get paid for radio airplay? And most people don't know that. And I have to admit that up until this last year or so, I didn't know that. And when people hear that, they go, oh, because it sort of answers the, well, why should I care about this? Why should artists get paid for radio play? Well, for starters, because they do everywhere else. Oh, well, that's a pretty good argument. The second thing is the short list of countries that share the United States position on this includes North Korea and Iran and Rwanda. And usually Rwanda is kind of a laugh line. It's like, wow, we're standing with Rwanda. That's not good. So this is definitely a list that you do not want to be on. And that really helps make the argument. And then of course the third part, which is incredibly important, and I feel especially important being here in Toronto, which is that because the United States is not paying artists from other countries are not paying American artists in their home countries as well. So there's a profound issue of reciprocity here. There's all of this money to be made, or I should say that is being made, where artists aren't getting paid. This would be good for Canadian artists, this would be good for US artists, this would be good for English artists, French artists, North Korean artists. This would be good for everybody. So that's the complete tonnage of our argument right there in 3 very simple sentences, and I wanted to keep it simple. And I need to go to the next slide. There we go. Oh, no, not that one. Nope, not that one. That one. There we go. So this is the I Respect Music page. And hey, you should have like a 40-page website. You should have all this information. No. We have a 1-page website, and it is the petition, which simply is a respectful letter to members of Congress saying, we urge you to support artists paid for radio play. It's not about a specific bill, it's not about a specific piece of legislation, it's about the idea, because it's the idea that has the feeling to it. This is unfair, we can fix this. So we're not asking you to support, HR 168, we're asking you to support the idea that artists should be paid for their work, that artists should be paid for radio play. That's what the petition says. You can see the Taylor Valentine video is there now. Earlier on we had another video, which I'm going to play next, if we're lucky. So the did you knows are there, the petition is there. It's some Facebook and Twitter shares on top. That's the total tonnage of the website. Keep it simple, keep it easy to use. I also made a decision, which is when you sign the petition, two things happen. The first is a little pop-up comes up and says, your petition has been sent, not stored and waiting to be sent for later, but sent right away. And we'll never use your email address for any third-party anything. We're never going to share your email. We also made another profound decision, which is that you don't get a thank you email when you sign the petition. We're going to leave you alone. You're not going to feel like you're now I'm stuck with these guys, right? So it's very simple to use, and it works great. It was very complicated to build. The man who built it is sitting right here, David Cloyd. And thank you, David, for all of the hours you didn't sleep. But it was important to make it simple to use, even though it was complex in the back. Okay, so here's the video that I'm hoping will play. Again, it's spontaneous. So that's really what happened. That's the best way to show what happened next, which is that it went nuts. And everyone started signing the petition and posting their own photo and making their photo unique. How can I make mine unique? This video was put together, again, spontaneously by the person out there who sent it to me. I didn't make the video. And in fact, you got to see the 7-second beginning there that we were going to show in the other one, so we're good. So everyone started making their own I Respect Music selfie, and everyone in a really fun and joyous and healthy way was trying to make their own picture unique and special. What can we do? So clearly they figured out that there are 13 letters in I Respect Music, and you need one more for the hashtag, so you need 7 people. It's a beautiful photo. And again, like as we roll through these photos, the common thread is that everyone is joyous and happy, and they feel empowered, I think, and they feel like they're a part of something positive, and something that again, it speaks to how they feel about music. Amazing and hilarious to me. Each person making it their own. I love the bubble, you know? And she gets it, you know? This is a random tweet. She gets performance royalties for radio airplay. So she got it. She knows exactly what this is about. And then the captain of the Enterprise showed up. Which to me was important because it says, at least we solved this by the 23rd century. So we just have to work on this in the 21st century. That's Patrick Stewart and his wife Sunny, who is an artist. She's a musician. So again, Chris mentioned this, but what was happening now is that music lovers and music makers together were standing together. And that's the first time that I've really seen that happen at that volume to that degree. Where people who don't make music and people who do make music are both saying, you know what, a lot of times we don't know what's right and wrong or what's fair or unfair, but a lot of times we do. And this is one. And this is fun, and I want to be part of this. Such a big deal when Patrick Stewart did this, because he's not a musician. He's an artist, and he says, advocate for artists. Music matters. And it was amazing. Plus, it brought in all of the Klingons into our fold, and you want them to support him. Extending the circle was then when Gloria Steinem tweeted this: artist rights are human rights. And she's not an artist. She's a profound advocate and figure, historical figure, who's making the connection that getting paid for what you do, getting paid for your work, is a human right. And again, she looks so beautiful, and it's positive. Everyone is smiling, which is so. I think that's why it's also rolled and become more and more and more contagious, because it's fun. This is Jane Fonda. Respect the performers. And for me, you know, having recognizable people show up and is so beautiful and exciting. And, you know, it's like you're jumping up and down. Did you hear? Look who did it! Look who did it! But to me, this kind of thing is even more powerful, because this is a kid to me who's saying, "I want to be a musician." And look at his face. You know, it's moving to me every time I see this photo. He wants to do this. And he's being courageous to show what it is he wants to do with his life. And I gotta tell you, and I know it's maybe a little cheesy and a little moving, but I really mean it. I was this kid. And when I saw this, it breaks me up every time I see this. He's so beautiful. Students in Hawaii, in their music program, and on and on and on. Everyone putting their own swerve on their own photo, their individuality, and yet everyone is standing together because of this emotion, this feeling. So I'm just going to wrap up really quickly now. But the next step was we got the attention of music makers and music lovers. We're expressing how we feel. We've got attention of really recognizable people in and outside the arts. And then we got the attention of Capitol Hill. And what I did is I was invited to have some meetings in DC about what we were doing and about the issue. So I printed out all the signatures that we had to date. And I printed them out in a book to carry with me on this trip. And the guy at Staples said, well, the smallest I can print these are like 50 a page to really read them. It's going to be like 400 pages thick. And I was like, cool. Can you put one name on a page so it would be like 10,000 pages thick? So this is Michael Huppy, the president of Sound Exchange, who has been courageously fighting for artists to get paid for a long time. It was great to have him stand with us and be excited about what we're doing. And this is a guy who fights every day, and I'm sure sometimes the days are long, but again, he's joyous and happy, and it was just terrific to have his support for this. His staff was not going to be left out, and so they did their own together. And there it is, we agree, all radio stations should pay artists, regardless, internet, satellite, AM, FM. I like the guy with the hood at the top there. This is me and two of my I Respect Music volunteer helper people, and my Congressman Gerald Nadler. And we had a great meeting as well. And I asked him if it was okay, can I hold the book? And would you mind taking a photo? He's like, I want to take a photo. I said, how do you feel about holding the book? He's like, well, why don't you hold the book? I want to hold the sign. I want to do what everybody else is doing. I want to do that. That's the fun part. I want to do the fun part. So, and this is me with Jacqueline Charlesworth at the center there, the General Counsel for the United States Copyright Office, and her staff. And we had a great meeting, and by the end I had them, they're deep inside the legalities of all the administrations of the policy, but we were laughing and joking about the positivity of this campaign as well. So, and I like that the American flag is in the background. And this was actually just on Monday. This is Congresswoman Judy Chu, who's the chair of the Creative Rights Caucus in the House of Representatives. And I jumped around for more time than I care to admit, although I'm not admitting it right now anyway. Your voices are being heard. I respect music. I respect creators. And again, she's just so joyful. I love her handmade sign and the seal of the House of Representatives and the American flag. Amazing. So, and we also have the support of Ludwig van Beethoven, which I think is important. So, we don't have the signature, but we do have the support. So what ended up happening is, what people are also doing now, as this moves forward, is people are turning the hashtag into whatever they want. I see tweets or posts all the time. The new Beck record is out. I think it's his best ever, my favorite record of the year. Hashtag I respect music. And that's amazing, because it says, this is a piece of work that I respect. Best concert I ever went to last night. I saw so-and-so. I respect music. Amazing. So the feeling is translated. And that's really what I wanted, if you remember back at the beginning. This is a tweet from day before yesterday that I saw. And even though we've been talking about radio, and not specific, it is a copyright issue, of course, but that hasn't been the bent of what we've been working on specifically, and trying to keep this simple. But here's somebody making those connections and rolling forward. I'm not giving up my copyrights. I respect music. And that was just day before yesterday. And then I had a little fun with it too. So people, the idea, and that's the beauty of the hashtag, it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to even what we're doing, it belongs to everybody. So it's the idea that belongs to everybody. And just 2 more quick slides. So very much to my surprise, my high school asked me back for career day this year. And I just was there 2 weeks ago. And a lot of the kids had known about what had happened the year before, and they knew about the article, and they knew about I Respect Music, but they kind of freaked out when they made the connection, like, oh my God, this is you? You're the one who did this? And I read the article, and these kids could not wait to stand up and take this photo. And I am grinning from ear to ear. These beautiful kids, by the way, who aren't saying this year, I don't know how connected this is, but this is true. They weren't saying, I want to be. They were saying, I am. I am a trombone player. I write stories. I played the euphonium. Determined, powerful. So, we're only in our first 100 days. We're really just getting started. Simple tools, a simple message, a simple QR code that you can hold your phone up and go right to the site and sign a petition. You can make your own sign. I think it's been positive, it's been powerful. I'm determined to keep it that way. And the next 100 days are going to be even more filled with joyous surprises and even bigger than before. And it's been an incredible honor to be a part of this every day, to see people's faces and their tweets and their posts and their signatures and what's happening. So I hope that that's valuable in you setting up your campaigns, and that feeling of authenticity and intimacy for me and for what we've done has been central. And that might be the thing that's central for you as you set up your campaigns too. So thanks for listening. I Respect Music.
Girl from the Philippines posted that 2 days after the hurricane hit. That's right. And
that's right.
It's kind of more remarkable. So we have time for some questions if y'all have some questions. Richard.
I was just in Washington on Grammy on the Hill.
We got a mic coming.
Yeah, where's the mic? You're getting a mic.
Competing with the band.
Always.
But I respect music.
I Respect Music, that's right. Let them play.
Okay. Anyway, I was saying that I sit on the Board of Governors for the Recording Academy, Los Angeles, and we were just in Washington in April for Grammy on the Hill, and we brought Booker T, who's the perfect artist, and we went around to 54 senators, and it was really fantastic to promote I Respect Music, even though at that time we didn't know this existed. But Congressman Chu, I'm forming a committee for her for the Creative Rights Caucus as well. And I just respect her work, and we have to keep going because it's really important.
I couldn't agree more. We will.
And to that, speaking of Booker T, some of you may have heard that Pandora and Sirius, curiously, I wouldn't say at the same time, because that might sound like they had a conversation about it, but they both stopped paying on pre-72 masters, performance royalties on pre-72 recordings. So I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but if any of you are in the category of non-U.S. person who's released a record in your home country and has not released a record in the United States within 30 days of the date you released your record in your home country, come see me afterwards because there are people that want to talk to you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. At the end of your talk, you mentioned about the next 100 days. Can you tell us about what your plans are for the next 100 days?
Well, the next thing that we're hoping for, which is really the first thing that we're hoping for, is we're hoping for legislation that's going to make a difference. So, if you were to see the arc, if you see the arc that I kind of mapped out, I think that every day working music makers and everyday working music lovers was the beginning. And then it became some really recognizable people that felt this was a cool thing to join in on. And then it became something where our legislators said, you know what? I think this is a cool thing to join in on. And whether it's Congressman Nadler or Congresswoman Chu was 5 days ago. So I don't think we've seen the last selfie from members of Congress. You know, this is a selfie that's like, it's okay to take, right? It's not an annoying one, it's a good one, it's a statement. So I actually think that we're just about to see that stage now. And I think that's what we're beginning to see. And I think that the awareness about the issue and the positivity about it, and us not being behind one bill versus another, but being behind the idea, is what the next 100 days are about. And people often ask me, like, well, what's the end game of this? The end game is when we win. That's the end game. And it's okay to say that. The end game is when we fix this, because this is the embarrassing one. It's a heavy lift, but come on. We got to get Aretha paid for respect.
Yes, sir. Bill?
Blake, Jake Cole, I'm a manager. Great work that you're doing. What is the RIAA doing to help you with this? Because I just want to give you a story. In 1997, I sat at a conference in Aspen, Colorado, which is now called Aspen Live. I was the only Canadian there. Canada had just passed neighboring rights legislation, and we were starting to see the checks come in because it was retroactive money. So some of it had gone back to 94 or 95. And they were all talking, Napster had just started to happen, and they were all talking about how we're going to deal with Napster, how we're going to deal with Napster. And I said, why aren't you dealing with neighboring rights? And nobody in the room knew what neighboring rights was. And we're talking about the heads of RIAA and some of the biggest entertainment lawyers in the business. No one had any idea, and they dropped the ball then because they were worried about the digital in 1997. So what is RIAA doing to help with your cause?
Let me address that. So the first thing, it's a good question. The first thing about this campaign that is important to keep in mind is that there's nobody behind it. One of the things that Blake kept getting questions about in the early days, as staffers started getting thousands of emails on their Blackberries, like 2 or 3 a minute, they're saying, okay, who's behind this? And they all assumed that someone was behind it, and no one was behind it, except people who cared about the issue. That was tough. After the SOPA experience on Capitol Hill, there was a lot of negativity towards kind of the organized entertainment industry, which I think is going away, and I think it's getting better. But what you saw with the IRFA bill, which is the Internet Radio Fairness Act, that was like referred to as the Pandora's kind of signature legislation, was that the RIAA and those groups actually turned to the artists a little pre what Blake was doing. Blake was sort of part of that, but they turned to the artists to get a list of people who would be willing to sign an ad. And I think that was also a turning point for the members of Congress, because they saw, well, it's not just the lobbyists who are coming up here, it's these artists. Jimmy Jam testified at the hearing. So they began to hear from the artists. And I think that legislators want to hear from the artists. And I think would you agree with that? I mean, that seems to be the experience here. So it's not that the RIAA is not doing anything, they are, but this is a completely independent effort. And it's important that it stay independent.
And I understand it, I think it's definitely more powerful, but the question was, what are they doing?
The concrete thing that I know that they did is I do know that they retweeted, and they retweeted and reposted about it, which is great. My focus, we certainly want everybody's support, and we want, like I said, we want to win. I do think that Chris is right that the power of what we got started and the momentum that this has is that it's everyday people. So as organizations want to support it, that's great too. But what they're doing specifically really has nothing to do with what I'm doing, because it's, like Chris was saying, we launched this on my laptop.
But they're aware of it. We're communicating with them generally, I would say. But they're as involved as I personally want them to be, which is not. Not against them. They do what they do. We do what we do. We're all working for the same goal. But I will tell you one quick anecdote. I had a conversation with a reporter from a big newspaper one day about this campaign. I said, you've got 10,000 signatures in 30 days. And the guy said, well, that's nothing compared to what Google got for SOPA. I said, okay, that's great. Let's give Google $500 and Blake $500 for their marketing budget, and we'll see how they do. That is starting to get, sink in with people now. Anybody else? Ted Cohen. We'll get you.
Hi, I'm David Baskin. I'm a lawyer. Your campaign is extraordinary. I wonder, just as a general proposition, how repeatable it is. There have been so many things that have become internet phenomena that made a tremendous impression, and yet the second time around, the freshness was gone. Just a general question, an observation, I guess. My real question is this. Your I Respect Music campaign has one hell of an uphill climb against the combined forces of those who don't want to pay for performance of recordings, radio stations, other broadcasters, web operators, and so on. They're in Washington every day, probably more lobbyists than would fill this room. How do you sustain and keep this going? I would think that has to be one of the biggest challenges you're facing. This initial burst of enthusiasm got attention, but that leaves Washington going, and so?
Well, yeah, I mean, usually that, I don't know, but you make a good point, David, but the point is with this campaign, the way it's structured, because it's kind of idea-based and not legislation-based, this is kind of like Zorro with the candles, I mean, the NEB is not really going to know what you're doing because you're kind of, you're on the internet, first of all, and they can't really see it because a lot of people don't know how to monitor it. But we're not going to necessarily be able to get all the members of Congress on board, but we can get, I mean, think about it. What we're really seeing here demographically is what I would call the pro-am market. The people who are weekend warriors, the Guitar Center customer, right? There's a lot of those people. And if you can get to them over time, you're going to have a pretty strong voice. And they're going to be in every jurisdiction and in every precinct, I mean, maybe not 100% of the precincts, but there'll be a broad distribution. And so I think, over time, the campaign will sustain itself. And what have you seen lately, right? I mean,
I hear you about that initial, what happens after that initial spike or that initial motivation. I can just be honest with you, which is, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing a spike. I'm seeing it just grow. I think that this is bigger now than it was yesterday, when I woke up yesterday, and the week before that, and the week before that. And I think that it is because it comes from a feeling and the idea that artists should be paid for their work. And so, to see Congresswoman Chu just do this on Monday shows, and she's the chair of the Creative Rights Caucus, who has been, they were lovely, they tweeted about me doing this morning. They posted about that doing this morning. So the idea of bipartisan legislation, which is what this is going to be in the end, the idea that this isn't a Republican or Democratic issue, this isn't a music maker or music lover issue, this is a both-and issue, is, I think, something that makes this timeless. That doesn't, I certainly haven't seen every grassroots campaign, but, oh, and by the way, that's worth mentioning, I've never done this before. So it's not like I had a huge playbook to draw from. We really kind of just did what felt right, So I have nothing to compare this to because it's my first time around. But I don't think that it's it's not about a stunt or even about, a couple people asked me like, well, how many signatures do we need? And I was like, well, when you get to 11,612, that's the magic number when Congress acts, It's about putting healthy and positive pressure on the people who make the laws, and healthy and positive pressure to change hearts and minds. And changing hearts and minds to understand that artists should be paid for their work. That is not just a spike. That is not just an initial amount of enthusiasm. This is empowering people. So far, again, it's my first time around, but so far, all I'm seeing is that this is growing and growing and growing. And we're going to keep going.
It's growing by itself.
Right.
That's the other.
That's right.
Because the message resonates. Right. Ted, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say, so for the last couple of years I've had a sort of problem with the idea of likes on Facebook. So I say to people, what about Amnesty International? Oh, I like that. Yeah. Have you donated any money? No. Have you gone to a rally? No, but I like it. I really like it. So in that thought, I'm just wondering if adding a subtext of I value music, because people say, yeah, I respect music, I think it's great. Do you value it though? Do you want to pay for it? Are you willing to compensate somebody?
Right.
Takes it to another level. I'm not, this is fantastic.
Right.
But I have people say, yeah, I love music.
Well, just so you know, I think that your point, you just made 2 points that are key to what has happened and what we're doing. Let me just address the likes thing. I agree with you about likes. And that was my reaction when my article hit 40,000 likes, right? I'd never seen anything like that, and it was a really big deal. But the idea was, well, it's just a like, and that's lovely, but it doesn't do anything. So what if the button that people were hitting wasn't a like button? What if it was a button to actually do something? To send a signature to Congress to say, I believe in this. And that's a profound thing. Musicians, after what we've been through over the last 10 years, are like not the least paranoid people in the world. Like we're a little beat up, right? So to actually inspire people to click a button, to send a message to Congress, like I'm gonna be courageous and I'm gonna step up and stand for this. That was a link that I wanted to make, to turn a like into a click that would maybe mean something even more, number one. Number two, just so you know, I respect music is being taken in exactly the way you're saying. It means I value music. It means artists should be paid for their work. It means music is important to my life. And whether it's I'm standing up and showing you with this picture of myself, or like I said, tweets saying, I just went to my favorite concert of my life last night. I respect music. That says that's a valuable experience. I don't want a life without music. I don't want a life without that being a part of it. And I think that's why it's translated to music lovers and music makers.
We have time for one more.
Hi, John Skinner from the UK Music Gateway. I love what you're doing. You have my support. I just wanted to ask whether you have any support or voice from radio, whether that's outside the US or obviously inside the US.
Well, all I can tell you is I've done a lot of radio interviews about this, so they certainly want to talk about it. And I've been doing a lot of college radio specifically, and a lot of like college-run stations, a lot of stations that are run by the kids that you've been seeing. And they're horrified, A, that we don't pay artists. They're excited about the campaign. They want to help get the word out. So, you know, again, radio isn't to blame. It's people, you know, it's never the medium, right? It's not the internet's fault. It's not radio's fault. It's people who need, who the best way to defeat your opposition is to show them the light, is to show them what would really be the right thing to do. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. So when I do these radio interviews, all I can tell you is I've done a lot of them, and it's been positive every time. I've never gotten into some kind of ugly conversation. They're fascinated by this. They stand with it. And a lot of times, it's college kids, like I'm saying. So.
And I'd say the jocks are, if you get them to talk when their boss isn't around, you know, the jocks are on side.
Yeah, they love music. This is what they wanted to do with their lives. Okay?
All right, well, thank you, Blake. We're going to do the table discussions now, and I'm going to do a little housekeeping so we all kind of understand what the ground rules are here. You'll have a table facilitator, I think, at each of the tables, and you're going to have some discussion questions that you can, you know, use or not use as you choose, but we prefer that you use them. And then I think there's a questionnaire this year still. Is that right? Yeah. So these discussions are conducted under what are called Chatham House rules, and there's a fuller exposition of this at your table. But the idea is that to encourage in-depth and frank discussion, we need to have some confidentiality apply to our discussions. And the Chatham House rule says, when a meeting or a part thereof is held under the Chatham House rule, participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speaker, nor that of any participant may be revealed. So keep that in mind, particularly any journalists who are in the room. So, you know, feel free to begin your discussions. We're going to probably do this for, it looks like, about 20 minutes or so. and then I'll give you some time calls as we